Came to Believe, the spiritual adventure of AA as experienced by members. Hey everyone, this is Scott. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back to Sober Reading Sunday. Today is Sunday, July 6th, and we're going to continue with Chapter 6 from Came to Believe. Chapter 6 is titled The Search. So the first story I'm going to read is called The Seed of God. The second story is titled To the Fourth Step. Alright, so let's get started. The Seed of God. No one could have been more happy than I in my early days of AA. Before that, my fears had become nightmares. If I slept, it was a tortured, restless sleep, and I would awaken to my own cries. Often, I could not sleep at all. So, when I could once again awaken in the mornings with bright eyes, I felt like a young lad. Now I could laugh again, and I reached the point that I enjoyed this more than alcohol. Each day of sobriety was a testimonial of my attempt to become a human being. AA was right for me, but not the spiritual side of the program. I had already had enough of forced religious training. I was suspicious of the discussions on this subject. A part of a quotation from the Bible, visiting the iniquity of the fears upon the children of the third and fourth generation, encompassed me with fear of God's wrath. But my spiritual growth became stronger from the experiences of others. It was explained to me that I could freely choose a God of my understanding. At first, I thought I was committing a sin by trying to change God, but I soon realized that God was constant, and the only changes that had to be made were in my sick mind. I learned that if you read the Bible quotation in its entirety, God promised to show mercy to those who love and keep His commandments. The decision whether to belong to the condemned or to the group enjoying mercy and compassion was mine. At that time, I didn't have the requirements for recovery. Instead of complete surrender, I set up forced rules for myself. I failed to ask God for help and guidance and tried to follow these self-imposed rules instead. But when I failed, I did ask God's forgiveness, and I promised to do better. My AA sponsor advised me that, to get help from our higher power, we ourselves must ask in humility and sincerity. Another person, however good and wise, cannot plant the seed of God within us. God alone can do this. My problem was to find this sprout among the weeds in my mind. Is it not true that there is some good in each of us? To me, God's creations are works of perfection. Even I am a miracle, developed from a tiny seed, which had concealed within it all of my own future qualities and even those of generations yet to come. A scientist is but a common laborer compared to the higher power. Science bases its knowledge on hypotheses. Compared to God's wisdom, man has only remotely touched the truth. Still, I can believe in the scientific theories that all activity is electronic motion, and so it is very easy to imagine that we are governed by an even greater electronic force. God is alive, and the universe revolves around Him, even as the electrons do around the core of an atom. I cannot comprehend what is inside a tiny electron, any more than I can visualize what is beyond outer space. I know not how a cell is born, nor where I go in eternity. Scientists have said that the cells of the body are renewed every 8 years. If this is true, then my body and I are separate entities, since I have survived the whole metamorphosis of my body over and over. The world, too, is changing constantly, and I am no longer afraid of this change. I want to be a part of it and its new developments. I have been shown and fully believe today that faith can move mountains. I once encountered many blind alleys, but today, as long as I have faith, my path is clear. This has all been slow progress for me. Like so many, I do not always surrender completely. I allow the cares and worries of the day to distort my thinking. But as soon as I get back on the right track, I realize that I have everything I need. Whatever problems confront me, large or small, they can be solved wisely, or they can be solved my way. The choice is mine. If I want to know God's will, I must pause and ask, what would God have me do? Why then is it so difficult for me just to pause, to meditate, and to allow God to guide me? The reason is my ego. I know, though sometimes I forget, that by myself my capabilities are nil. I could not, now or ever, develop the most minute electron. When my days were filled with fears and I was trying desperately to hang on, I discovered that I could take the third step and be on firm ground. I have since taken this step countless times. I actually experience a sense of physical freedom when I give up to the demands of life. To leave all and follow thee means for me total acceptance, even of that which I would not desire for myself, such as misfortune, poverty, illness, and even death. I completely surrender my life and my thinking to my higher power. After all, when the world comes to an end someday, it will do so without my permission. Helsinki, Finland. The next story is titled, To the Fourth Step. Even at an early age, booze was no stranger to me. I remember crawling from one soused parent to another for a mouthful of beer. As I grew older, the craving for the stuff drove me to find more. Too young to get a job, I turned to thievery. I was a good thief, I thought. The law soon deflated that balloon. On my second trip to jail, I attended my first AA meeting with strong recommendations from the authorities. All the members greeted me and talked about how the 12 steps had helped them and in turn should help me. For some mysterious reason, the conversation turned toward God, religion, and an undefinable higher power. Uh-oh, I didn't want anything to do with something even remotely connected with religion. Besides, I said, I'm not an alcoholic. I had just turned 19. Although I kept attending meetings, I couldn't accept the religious aspect. After I got out, booze went on flowing down my gullet until one morning I awoke in the strangest place, at home. That did it. That very night, my mother and I both attended an AA meeting. Sobriety was a novelty, and for 14 years I enjoyed it. The humble business I started grew and prospered. I had become part of the human race. It was great. Then business pressure began to mount, and I suddenly couldn't face those simple problems. That was when my old enemy reappeared. I couldn't resist that one little drink, for old time's sake. Business profits took a plunge. Alcohol gained steadily. Once again, I found myself in court. I was horrified when the judge said, "You are charged with the theft of 64 bottles of whiskey. I have no alternative but to sentence you to a federal penitentiary." "You can't send me to the penitentiary," I roared. "I haven't got the time." The spectators laughed aloud until the gavel fell. I hung my head low in the realization that they were laughing at me. I don't know how long after that embarrassing day it was before I remembered the 12 steps and made the fourth step work for me. I asked myself questions and answered them truthfully. This done, I joined the prison AA group. For me, that inventory is a higher power, God, and willpower all combined into one. Step 4 was all I needed. This time, there was no mention of religion, much to my relief. We discussed the force, power, or object that for each one of us had been our higher power. You see, anything connected in any way with religion is frowned on, to say the least, by us. Yet I have seen many members of this group leave and never return to booze or prison. Agnostic, you say? Certainly, but that too has been an advantage for me. My search for a God that I could not find led me to step 4. This step, I feel confident, will help me stay sober. Waupun, Wisconsin. Alright, since there's only 2 stories left in Chapter 6, we're going to go ahead and finish them up in this episode. This next story is titled, Back to the Fundamentals. AA was asking me, of all people, to believe in God. Not only that, they were asking me to believe so thoroughly that I'd be willing to turn my life and my will over to God as I understood Him. I didn't understand Him. I didn't know anything about Him. In one way or another, I had been a Catholic, a Baptist, a Presbyterian, an Episcopalian, a Lutheran, and a Christian Scientist, and I'd even been exposed to some extent to the beliefs of Mormons, Mennonites, and Quakers. When I was in college, I specialized in ancient history and got very interested in the mystics. Also, I learned something about Mohammedanism, Buddhism, the mythology of the Vikings, the Romans, and the ancient Greeks, and the original, primitive, pagan religions, but I still couldn't believe. I tried reading the Bible, but I bogged down so hopelessly in the terminology that it was pathetic. So I turned to small books written by Bible scholars. Maybe I'm learning something, I thought, or maybe I'm just getting confused. But I've got to keep on with this, because at least I'm staying sober. I was still going to AA meetings and talking to older members who had been sober for a long time. Many of them had a smile in their eyes while I talked. They had already been through this. One of them advised me to go back to the Bible, especially to the Sermon on the Mount, the condensation of Jesus' message. After we had discussed it, I was able to take from this reading 3 things that helped me, that I could relate to my AA life. Love thy neighbor. Where else but in AA could you find 500,000 people dedicated to love and really loving each other? The love of one alcoholic for another is something never seen before in the history of the world. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In AA, we do unto others what's already been done unto us. We help others as we have been helped. As you think, so shall you be. I grew to believe that every deed we perform in our entire lives is just the outward manifestation of an inward thought. If there was a glass of whiskey in front of me, my hand couldn't reach out and pick it up. My hand and arm are not capable of independent action. The only thing that could make my hand reach out and take that glass and bring it up to my lips would be a thought in my head. Hand, reach out and take the glass. While I was making some progress, I still didn't have a concept of God. So I went back to the big book, as I had done so many times before with other problems. The answer I was looking for was on page 12, in Ebby's words to Bill. Why don't you choose your own conception of God? I've tried everything else, I thought, and I've got no place else to go. I might just as well. I sat down at my desk, got a pad of paper and a pencil, and asked myself, if you could pick the kind of God that you could believe in, what would he be like? I bore in mind the facts that I was an alcoholic and that I had been a perfectionist all my life. The world was never perfect enough for me. Everything that I ever believed in, every ideal that I ever followed, turned out to have feet of clay. Here was my chance. For the first time in my life, I could create something perfect. All right. I wrote across the page, God is the perfection I've been searching for all my life. He is too perfect to have human characteristics and faults. That was the start. Then I wrote, God is the ultimate perfection. He is the perfect love, the perfect truth, the perfect goodness, the perfect understanding, tolerance, mercy, forgiveness. God is so perfect that no matter how evil, how unclean we may be, He'll forgive us if we ask, and grant us strength to overcome our shortcomings. I sat back and told myself, you're a brain. You've come up with something brand new here. And then I realized that I was no big brain, just a dunce. This was the God that Jesus was talking about 2,000 years ago when he stood on the hillside and said he had a Father in heaven who loved all human beings. Then I thought, what is the one theme that will pull all this together in my mind? I had a strange feeling that I was getting close. At one time, the great jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes was asked what his religion was, and he answered that his whole concept of God could be found in the first 2 words of the Lord's Prayer. So I got out a copy of the Lord's Prayer and looked at it. The first word was our. It didn't say your, my, her, or his. It said, our Father. He is the Father to all of us. He created every one of us. I happen to be a father myself. One of the world's worst, but no matter how sick or how bad I got in my days of drinking, I never once wished any harm to my own children. Nothing but the best for them. And I have to assume that this is what our Father wishes for us. He created us, and He cares what happens to us. He didn't create me to die a drunk in an alley. We're not just some higher form of animal that's got a little better brain and a thumb that can meet the first finger to grasp a weapon or light a fire and so make us superior. We're a different breed entirely. We're unique because of the universal law that like begets like. A rose bush can't produce a lily of the valley, and a cow can't produce a colt. If God is a spiritual being, then we are spiritual beings. Warren, Pennsylvania. And finally, the last story to finish up chapter 6 is titled, This Spirit Touch. After 9 months of Alcoholics Anonymous and a few slips, I had a terrible bout with resentment, self-pity, and 2 bottles. The next morning, a beautiful, fresh spring morning, an alcoholic awakening came. This I never have to do again. I was free, ready to learn what AA was all about. The marvelous way of life, so simple in structure, so profound in practice. We must never let a newcomer know before he is ready how God springs his magnificent trap and teaches us that love means responding. 4 years later, vicissitudes came close together in our family. A disappointment, a long terminal illness, and 3 deaths. During those sad times, friends lent my husband and me their apartment at a southern beach. It was in this quiet interlude that a moment electric occurred in my life. A God-given new awareness. The wings of the Spirit were unfurled, and ever since I have been learning to use these wings. I have learned that others grow these wings more slowly, without a moment electric, and that theirs still are strong and beautiful. I have also learned that others have been given this experience, and then have thrown their wings away, because they mistakenly thought that the Absolute would sustain them automatically. I weep for them, because they did not gather that half the beauty of a gift lies in the manner in which it is received. They did not respond. At some time, perhaps in a more moderate way, nearly everyone has experienced this spirit touch of God. The fleeting feeling of insight, love, joy, and the world is right. Once, I thought that only unusual circumstances made these moments possible. Actually, I now think they are forecasts of what one can have if one is willing to take the time and make the effort. Peace, love, and joy can be sought through quiet thinking and honest prayer. The wholeness, the new awareness, that is produced affects one's relationship with God and man to a degree greater than would seem possible in ordinary life. The clamor of now is reduced. Understanding is increased. Feelings become something to explore rather than to suppress. These moments are not ends in themselves, but strengthening links in a chain of events. A deepness within is opened, calm, restful, glorious depths. There is a joining of inner forces with outer forces. The power greater than ourselves puts us in tune with the world. Of course, there are times when the instrument is out of key, and then we have an insatiable desire to find the key again. Undoubtedly, this way of life is different for each person, because each becomes his true self in relation to others, as well as to himself. Everything becomes filled with purpose, whether it is small or large, ugly or beautiful. In the life of the Spirit, there is no small, there is no ugly. Paradoxically, inwardness increases the importance of other people and of one's surroundings. All 5 senses are more alert. The feeling is one of completeness. Sometimes I am at ease in the world for days at a time. Then this serenity goes away, but the understanding continues. My shortcomings have not disappeared. Anger, self-pity, hastiness, envy, selfishness, resentments. But they have lessened, because now I know that when I do not exert control over these shortcomings, the harmony of completeness vanishes. My talents have not improved particularly, but I take more enjoyment in those I possess, through immersion in each moment of doing. My relationships with others are more involving, especially in the one-to-one encounter. There is a marvelous sense of timing during these days of completeness. A watch isn't necessary. Each action dovetails with the next. No one moment seems more important than another. Each moment is full. This, perhaps, is real prayer. I have nothing to do with the joyance that comes forth. It is as though I spoke with other tongues. How this happens is a mystery, but it is remarkable to see the surprised reactions of others and to know that their lives, too, may be changed for a moment. I believe completeness is waiting for anyone who will take the time to make the effort through quiet thinking, honest prayer, chosen reading, and exercise. These are the ingredients. It is an adventure so worthwhile that all else fades in comparison. yet it makes all else worthwhile. Richmond, Virginia. And that, my friends, concludes Chapter 6. Next week, we will start on Chapter 7, which is titled Coincidence? Until then, enjoy the upcoming week, but don't forget to tune in daily for the reading of Daily Reflections, 24 Hours, and As Bill Sees It. So as always, just for today, don't drink, go to a meeting, and keep coming back. Have a great day. And as my friend Larry says, best day ever.